Hi, Barbara. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Anna. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Today's topic is leveraging AI and strategic change management for double digit growth. I'm going to give a quick intro on you because I think you have such a fascinating background. And we have so much to cover, but I want people to know a few things about you. So, first up, you're a Fortune 100 strategic and results driven executive recognized for transforming and leading large scale revenue teams to achieve that double digit year over year growth across diverse industries and competitive markets. So, for the audience, no matter the industry you're in, you need to listen to what she has to say. Barbara currently leads 100 sales professionals, and honestly, the number I'm gonna share is pretty big, so I feel a little imposter syndrome saying this. But in Avanad's 1.5 billion Accenture Microsoft Business Group, her team is providing customers with innovative digital cloud and advisory services, sustainable industry solutions, and design led experiences across the Microsoft ecosystem. That last part that I want to share is something I'm also very passionate about, and it's being an advocate for professional women. So, Barbara co founded Amazon Business Women's Advocacy Circle in 2020 to promote a more inclusive workplace for women. Now, this resulted in 300% year over year growth in promoting and recruiting women identifying professionals. This group called WAC now has more than 1,000 members, provides career development, leadership opportunities, and unconscious bias education. So, wow, Barbara, very happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
I will start by asking you one of the, I think, hottest topics of discussion, which is AI and sales related. You know, we've seen AI really transforming the sales process from inbound to outbound to lead scoring to automation based on signals. But how has it impacted your world? And can you give us some specific examples of maybe AI tools that you have used internally to enhance sales outcomes?
Yeah, that's such a great question because our clients are really looking for opportunities where they can leverage AI to not only create efficiencies, but where can they see real hard dollar savings and where can they leverage opportunities with AI to drive revenue and maybe redeploy resources that didn't have time in the past and now they have more time because they're being supported by AI to now do more revenue generating activities. And so I'm seeing that a lot with Microsoft Copilot, for example. Like we see a lot of efficiencies. The easiest example is M365 Copilot and having a Copilot to enable you to get real-time updates on meetings that you may be missing. Or maybe sometimes it's easier for us to retain information if we're seeing it written in addition to spoken communication in a meeting. And with Copilot, you have those real time updates and you're able to leverage that to really understand what your action items are. And anyone who struggles with note taking or understanding what they missed in a meeting and what they need to do, those types of solutions really take out a lot of that friction. Other times, I know as a seller, I could spend a lot of time thinking about a type of email that I want to write to a client. And how do you word it perfectly? And how do you get the right tone? How do you convey the action item that you want the client to take? And I remember sitting there as a seller, and it could take me an hour to write a simple email because I wanted it to be perfect. And these solutions, and I'm using M365 Copilot as an example, because you asked me what I'm using in my day to day, and that saves users so much time and it enables us as sellers to focus on client interaction and the strategy behind a deal. And how are we going to provide that value to a client? And how are we going to leverage what we know about their business and the industry? not worrying about having time to write that email or to forecast a deal properly or to understand what is missing in a deal that could possibly stall it.
Mhm.
Now there's tools that will do all of that for you. And so it really enables not only sellers, but professionals to focus on what's really important so they can spend time on areas that are going to drive revenue for the business.
So to me, I see this with Dexter every time. So we have an AI sales coaching platform, and it is really that safe space for people to prep, as you said, like an email, a discovery call. And it almost feels like, when a blind person puts glasses and can see the first time, it's like, where has AI been? Like, how have we been working like that all these years, right? Like, how, like, am I spending hours and hours trying to, like, go back to my recorded calls and figure out what I did or what my rep did wrong? It's like, come on, we've been living in such an inefficient world.
Yeah.
And there's people that really understand this now and go all in and try to maximize operations, sales, marketing, everything. But there's still others that I'm sure you're also dealing with that are more hesitant. Might be a little afraid of what AI does. Of course, the impact it has on the roles. I want to hear a little bit in terms of the challenges and how have you, with your background in also change management, been able to not necessarily persuade, but give that different perspective to those who have been hesitant internally in your team and externally.
It's so true because a lot of times we think about the risk, but not necessarily what the potential opportunity there is. And how I started is just using basic features
Mm.
and being able to have the real-time updates of a meeting and being able to have notes, action items, being able to take ideas that my colleagues and I have put together in a meeting and what we want to present to the client and being able to translate that into a deck very quickly. So I started small and then I started to think about what are the things that I really struggle with and what are the things that I had the opportunity to do a little bit better. And partly what we were talking about earlier is, I struggled with wanting to make sure I have that perfect note to the client. And I knew that there was opportunity for me to do that better. And so I said, why not leverage my copilot to help me write this a little bit better? And then I thought about, what are areas that I am struggling with and what could I do better? And sometimes I notice that I struggle with decks and conveying what I want in PowerPoint decks. And I worked at Amazon for many years, and we would convey our thoughts in Word documents and write 6-page docs that we would read as a team during team meetings before we would make any major changes or before we would make decisions on things that we want to do as a business. We would put together a doc instead of a PowerPoint deck. And so I thought, why not leverage AI to help me improve my ability to put decks together and capture what I want to convey properly in those decks? And so that could be a way to start is just leveraging it as a teammate and a tool in your toolkit to help enhance anything that you feel like you're struggling with or things that you just don't enjoy doing. There's always things that we don't enjoy doing in every part of our role, no matter what that is. That's a great area to see if you can use that AI to help
Mm-hmm.
with those activities.
I love the example because it really explains how it equalizes the playing field, right? Like, you're not gonna lose because you didn't have a presentation skill. Because what's
Exactly.
important is behind this, like, what are the words you use? What is the point you're trying to deliver. And now I've used a bunch of those tools too. Like I can create graphics in seconds. It's like Napkin AI. I put my document, it gives me that graphic. Now someone who's more visual can really get what I'm trying to say. And I think it's so important in sales too, because you have those people, like I was talking about this earlier, that are a little technical, they're more sales engineers, they know the tools in and out, but they're struggling to build that connection, or they're not adding a closing phrase at the end of that pitch. So now you have no excuse but to perform well. And similarly, your manager has no excuse but to coach you better based on data and not based on their bias and what they think you should be doing. I think that's the power of it. Like AI really shows us what is working and what isn't. So as a whole organization, if we're all now more efficient and really work together well, we will succeed. But if we're still fighting on, okay, which tool to use and how to do this, we're just not maximizing our chances.
Yeah, and I think that we should also give everyone grace because it's not going to solve every single issue that we have. If we are struggling with forecasting, and yes, now you have tools that can help you forecast, and it takes a lot of the art out of it or the science out of the forecasting, but it's not going to solve every single nuance. So there's going to be a need to make sure that the data is accurate, the underlying data that is supporting these technologies. And there's going to be a need to ensure accuracy and making sure that if you are pulling data from a large language model, that you're not noticing hallucinations, and that's where accurate data comes into play. And where we start with a lot of our clients is in building the foundation for data governance and data accuracy. And so I I do believe that we still have to give people some grace as they are using these tools as a teammate to enhance the role that they have.
I totally agree. I don't think you can turn something bad to brilliant because of AI, but you can really get that average performance to be increased. And I do still very much believe in the human in the loop process, right? I don't think teams should be just fully replacing team members because of AI. I think there's so much to be said about using AI to amplify those human skills. That's what we also believe as a company. There's a lot of effort right now happening, especially in the VC world, to just automate, and we're not really thinking the impact this thing has. And talking about impact, have you seen different really results across industries? Do you think professional services, for example, have been using it differently than B2B SaaS or other industries?
Yeah, there's use cases across different industries. And what we're doing with our clients is identifying the use cases that are going to drive the most business value. Where we're seeing the need, no matter what industry it is for customized solutions. So there's a need for custom co-pilots so that companies can use, and the emphasis is on low code, no code solutions where they can take AI use case that they have in their business and build it to apply to their specific needs where they can drive value and measure success. So no matter how the tools are being used or in what industry, what we're overwhelmingly hearing from our clients is the need for seeing real value. And how do we use this tool as a cost takeout function? Or how do we use these tools to redeploy our professionals to be doing more revenue generating activities? And so, what could that mean in a real example? Is if you have a call center and your agents are interacting with your customers and resolving issues, why not there be a function and a use case for those agents to take it a step further and suggest upgraded services and add-on services. And maybe there's a more efficient way to have self-service support on resolving issues. So there's a lot of different use cases that apply to specific industries, but what is critical, no matter what industry it is making sure that there's that immediate value and value that you can measure over time, and then having a way to understand what are those metrics that you're going to use to really measure that value and see where you're getting value from it. And that is critically important to our clients. And I think it's going to be more and more important because as companies invest in these types of solutions, there is going to be a real need to understand what the ROI is beyond just time savings and productivity savings. Like, how do we take that savings and apply that to ways where we can generate more revenue? And it could look like deploying those resources to more revenue generating activities and sales relating activities, or it can be something simpler with leveraging agents in your call center to be selling for you. And that's just some of the ways that no matter what industry you're in, generating revenue and cost takeout is going to be critical. Generative AI, agentic AI can be at the forefront of solving those challenges.
Talking about agentic AI, I was just at G2's event the other day. We talked a lot about agent to agent communication. And to your point, when everybody uses them for like outbound and inbound, we will get to a moment in time when there's so much hyper personalization, which is great, but it's also way too much that we all now get bombarded by things we could potentially be interested in. So there still has to be that protection layer of me having a digital protecting my time and energy and really allowing only the things that there's 90% likelihood plus that I will actually click through and engage with, right? And it becomes so hard because this customization, to your point, has to happen at the same time, both for the organization and for that individual. And we see that Dextago tool, you have to train them for their upcoming calls, their pipeline, but also for the best practice of the organization. Sometimes, that becomes difficult depending on how much data the client gives you, but it's key that we take into account a thing that individual is not just static, they also, evolve all the time. So the fact that these models have to continuously adjust and become better and better, but also understand when the interests of the user change and when their career paths change and who they need to meet along the path changes is becoming very complex and so much smarter than us. And I think understanding that we are the last generation that is smarter than agents or smarter than machines is a very big realization to make, because people will be raising kids that actually trust those tools much more than they trust another human, because they know that they get them. Same for, AI tutors and all these things. Connected back to the challenge, and I think what you said earlier was a very good advice, that you have to start small, but you have to understand that it goes much beyond that small scope if you want to have impact at scale.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because yes, agentic AI is making decisions and really enabling the opportunity for agents to make real change in a business. However, all of that is based on accurate data and building the agents so they can make those right decisions and also ensure that the the data is there so that everyone that's leveraging those agents is getting the results that they want, and those agents are able to actually do the revenue generating activities that we all hope that they'll be able to deliver on. And so I do think that's still a work in progress, and we're still building that, and there's still a lot of opportunity to see, what is possible there. But the human connection is still going to be a very critical part of that because we're going to be building those. We're going to be the ones deciding what are the agents going to be focused on? Where are we going to measure their value? Where are we going to deploy their time? How are they going to be used to help, drive revenue or take out costs in a certain area? So that's going to have that human touch, all of that strategy. And so I really do think it's an exciting time for us in this industry to help shape that and influence that.
Great. I love that. So let's switch gears a bit. Enough with AI for now. I want to talk about sponsorship, internal sponsorship within companies, and specifically with your experience. Obviously, you support a lot of women in sales. So how do you identify and attract sponsors within a company as a woman in sales? What's your advice?
Yeah, it's so interesting because we talk about mentorship, we talk about sponsorship, and it's very, very different. A mentor is somebody that you can bounce ideas off of about your career and progression of your career. And a sponsor is somebody who is, for lack of a better word, sponsoring you in your career. These are people who are in the room when decisions are being made and speaking on your behalf. And so it is critical to have a diverse group of sponsors in your company. And why I say that is because, as we all know, companies are changing and growing and they're very dynamic. And one thing that we've learned in the last 5 years is change is constant in this industry. And so there are people that are moving into different roles. There's new companies that are receiving investment. There are companies that are reducing costs. There are people that are retiring from the workforce. And so roles are always changing. And so you want to make sure that you have a diverse group of sponsors and not relying on one or two people that you believe can help you progress in your career. And how do you build that diverse sponsorship? Because it is hard to just have one sponsor, let alone, a handful across different functions. First thing to do is to really create a positive brand for yourself in your company. Demonstrate those results, really understand how your boss is measured, how their leadership team is measured, and make sure that you are aligned to delivering results that are going to help support how they're metriced. And so a real example of that is if you have a sales quota, but your boss also has a net income quota, for example, or an EBITDA quota, you want to make sure that your sales are profitable and that you're delivering the right sales. So that's the first step in building sponsorship, is starting with yourself and building that brand and delivering on the things that are critically important to your company. And then working across teams. So for promotion and career advancement, it's not enough to be an expert in your field. You're going to have to work across functions, collaborate cross functionally to be able to move up, be successful. And if you want to advance in your career and you're in marketing, they're going to want to know how you're partnering with product and sales, and being able to demonstrate how you've expanded your value to the company beyond just your function is going to be important. And that's a way to build sponsorship. And then making sure that you have sponsors across levels. So it's not just people that are going to be in the room, but people who are in the room and making those decisions are listening to people who aren't in the room, and they're being influenced by their teams and they want their teams to be happy, and they rely on the expertise of the people on their team to make decisions. And so it's important that you're building those relationships across levels. And so sponsorship is being confident that the people who are in the room making decisions can speak to the value and the results that you're driving for the company without you being in the room. and they can speak to that very eloquently and influence others to agree with their perspective. And so that is my advice for building a network of sponsors and just making sure that if there is a goal that you have for your career at your company, whatever that is, a new role, a promotion, that you're taking into consideration all of the things that we just talked about, in addition to whatever process the company has outlined.
And you and I met at the Women in Revenue event with Inset Partners where we discussed this topic a lot.
Yeah.
I remember a woman had suggested something very actionable, which is the end of each quarter, sending an email to your boss, your manager, right, saying, this is what I did, this is what I'm working on for next quarter, anything else to suggest? I would say this is something you should be sharing with this entire sponsor committee you have built
I love that idea.
to help them speak about you, right? They
Yeah.
need to know what your goals are. You need to stay relevant. So making sure you continuously keep building that relationship.
Yeah. And it is interesting because there's stakeholders that you have and there's sponsors. And providing a quarterly update of results is great for your boss and it's great for your stakeholders. And those stakeholders and your boss are people that eventually should be your sponsors. And those are the people that are not only stakeholders and know what you're working on and like working with you, but can speak on your behalf about your impact and results. Because it's not enough about what you've done in your role. It's, well, what is the impact of that work? Did that person exceed their quota? Yes. And that's table stakes now. How has that person impacted the overall business? Are there products that they've influenced the launch of because they got their clients to be part of a focus group? And now that product is generating double digit year over year growth. Those types of things are critically important in career advancement now. It's so much harder to advance than it was years ago. And so really having people that can speak to the impact that you've had on the business beyond just the requirements for your role is critically important.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about your impact. Let's talk about how you were able to achieve that double year over year growth. Maybe you can share some examples of strategies you came up with and how were they able to also reduce the cost of sale?
Yeah. So some of the things that I've done across my career, and I'll use the example at Amazon. Amazon has this leadership principle, learn and be curious. And so there is an emphasis on making sure that teams feel enabled, empowered to be successful and have all the resources to do that. And so part of it was implementing solutions for the team to be able to get the right training and understand not only product and the business value to our clients, but what is the sales methodology that we're going to follow? How are we going to handle objections? And how are we going to support each seller with a resource that's going to be with them to be invested in their success? And a lot of times that's the sales manager that's going to be assigned to work hand in hand with that person to ensure that they're just as invested in that person's success. And part of that community building extends beyond training and enablement, and it extends to those outside of sales. Who are the roles that are critical for the business success that can help sales drive pipeline? Is it the product team? Is there an industry subject matter expert team? Is there a marketing team? Is there a team that is focused on external work and working with clients or working with the industry that can help sales drive pipeline? Is there an opportunity to take those roles and give them a metric to help them drive revenue? And those are some other things that I've done in the past, is just really getting a community to help support sales. You know, the expression, it takes a village, it applies to so many things in life. And getting a deal closed is one of those times. It's never just the seller, even though the sellers work extremely hard. They are supported by a team of support that's helping them deliver on that sale. And so, is there a way to get those teams to help us drive pipeline by giving them a pipeline metric? And so that can help deliver more pipeline and engages more people in the company to help driving that pipeline.
Mm.
And then it also comes down to creating a culture of accountability. A lot of growth can be stagnant or contract if there's not a focus on continuous improvement. And if there's not a performance management mechanism, if there's not a continued focus on consistent feedback and it's receiving feedback, giving feedback, and making sure that it's verbal first, because you never want to put anything in writing that would be a surprise to anyone, and creating a culture where you're driving towards a high performing sales organization. And if you don't have a sales performance culture where there's performance management, then how are you highlighting the people that are doing really well? How are you rewarding them? We have a responsibility to top performers to make sure that we are investing in them, making sure that we retain them, and by showing them the respect that we have for the work that they're doing, by making sure that we inspire the rest of the organization to be high performing as well, and making sure that they have the tools and the resources to be high performing. And if they're not high performing, then how do we make sure that we're getting them the support to understand what does good performance look like in this organization? And so that's a big part of it too. And each organization is different, but what's critically important in driving that growth is having a strong leadership team. And I've been really grateful to have leaders that have supported me in what I wanted to do to drive success to a high performing sales organization, because it's not just going to be based on the sales team, and you're not going to be able to implement the changes that you want in a sales organization if you don't have support of the broader leadership team. So that's critically important.
100%. I mean, having a learning culture is everything, I think, today. Like, it really comes from the top and it has to continue to come, right? It's an effort that never ends if you want your team to keep developing. So, you mentioned there were people that supported you. Back to my previous question, can you share, like, who are your sponsors in your career? Who contribute
Yeah.
to your success?
And some of my sponsors, I would have never thought that they would be my sponsors, but it's interesting how you make an impact on people and certain people perceive the work that you're doing. And it's really important to make sure that you're building that brand with as many people as possible. And so I've had some amazing sponsors. Like, I'll start at Bloomberg, some people that helped found the startup at Bloomberg that I was part of, Bloomberg Government, and the leaders there. They were really looking to the first sales team to really drive opportunity in the market. And it was a startup as part of a larger organization. It's a very new product in a market that already had solutions that were doing what we were doing, but we had a very unique value proposition, and it was very cutting edge for the time. And the focus was on not worrying about the product roadmap and what's going to be in the product a year from now. Let's focus on the value that we have right now and where can we drive opportunity with our clients. And so that was my focus, is just selling what was in my bag and making sure that I was making a name for myself. And so I'm really grateful to the leaders there that have been my sponsors. And then when I was at Amazon, I was very grateful to have leaders that truly wanted to learn about what was needed to inspire sellers to want to stay at the company and want to impact their clients. And I had a head of sales who, male head of sales, was our first exec sponsor for the Women's Advocacy Circle. And that was a reminder to me that we all have allies and we all need to support each other in making sure that we're doing what we need to do to not only grow our business, but how do we improve our employee engagement? And how do we make people feel more connected at work? When my two colleagues and I started the Women's Advocacy Circle, it was in the early part of the pandemic. It was summer of 2020, actually spring of 2020 when we were doing this, and everyone felt really disconnected. And that was something that created a sense of community. And so I'm really grateful to leaders that I've had along the way that gave me the room to do that. And then at Avanade now, I have an amazing group of inspiring leaders that I learn from and give me feedback and also help me develop in my career and help me develop in my leadership abilities. And so I'm really grateful for that because I'm continuing to learn and grow every day. And so I'm really grateful that my leaders, who I think are my sponsors, are committed to continuing to help me grow and improve as a leader. And so I hope that gives a good overview of how I've worked with my sponsors in the past.
Absolutely. I'm very curious when you talked about the startup within Bloomberg, you mentioned it was a competitive space. So, what were some of the ways you penetrated the market? Like, you talked about value articulation. Like, how did you concretely go to market?
Yeah. So one of the things that differentiated the product was that we took the data that was given to Bloomberg and cleansed the data to ensure accuracy and provided it in a way that enabled clients to understand the data and make actionable decisions about that data. So you did not have to be an expert in what the data was saying to be able to understand what it meant or how it's going to impact your business. No other tool was doing that. So it was really up to us to articulate that value. And then we also had to look at what did Bloomberg provide that other companies couldn't? And a lot of that was our subject matter expertise, partly fueled by the news part of the business. And so I thought, why not showcase that a little bit and have events with our clients? And it could just be a casual lunch in our office where we feature a topic that's important to our clients and learn a little bit from our analysts. And they can come to our office and talk to our analysts, get questions answered, learn about something in the market that's important to them, and network with their peers in industry. And so that helped a lot. And so I think finding when you're in a crowded market, finding where you are differentiated and being differentiated on price is not helpful.
Yeah.
You want to differentiate on value.
Yes.
And how are you driving that value for your client? Like, what can your client do in their business now that's going to generate revenue for them or cut costs for them that they can't do with any other solution? How is your solution going to do that? And so that I think is a critical way to find your place in a crowded market.
Couldn't agree more. In fact, we had one of these events ourselves today. We do what's called the deal clinic, and we bring the sales experts that have trained our model to really be open for any question and any challenge clients or future clients might have and really connect. I think that is such a unique differentiation, like giving access to the people behind the machine. And it's really well received, and people do come and share what they're going through, learning from others. It's such a good point, and I feel like people sometimes forget that, again, prioritizing the automation. Your true differentiation will always be your people. That's
Yes.
always true. But you talked to me a lot about things that have worked. Now I want to ask you what hasn't worked. Anything that you've regretted, any risk that you took that now you look back and it wasn't such a wise choice?
Yeah, I think there are times when I felt like maybe I could have, and this is true for all new leaders, maybe I could have taken more time in the beginning, gotten to know all of my stakeholders. And that's part of what I was talking about earlier in building your brand and working collaboratively across functions, is because I had to learn that. And I think something that I could have done better in my career is coming in as a new leader is an opportunity to not just jump in and fix everything that you know is wrong, really getting to know the team, getting to know your stakeholders, learning from them, understanding how you can provide immediate value to them. And that's the best way to build a relationship is regardless of what their role is and what your expertise is, what their expertise is, we can all learn from each other. And there's always an opportunity to learn from each other. And so I think one thing I had to learn the hard way that I could have done better is slowing down in the beginning and really taking time to build those relationships by figuring out how I can provide value for not only my team and my leadership, but my colleagues and my stakeholders. Because that is the most important team are the people that you work with that you all report into your boss together. That's your first team, and those are the people that you have to make sure you're providing value to them and they are feeling like you're continuing to provide value and that you are invested in their success. And so that's definitely something I've learned. Also, another thing I learned in my career the hard way is that if there are people that you're working with, that they are getting really cool jobs, promotions, doing these really cool things, it's okay to not jump at that immediately and want that too. There is so much value in growing in a specific company, growing in your career, and there's always something that you can continue to learn. There was a time in my career where during the great resignation, I guess it was 2021, everyone was getting like really cool jobs and going to cool companies, and I wanted to do that too. And I think it's important to really reflect on why do you want that? Do you want that because you see other people that are getting these really cool roles and you want it too? You know, have I considered the type of company? Have I considered the type of impact that I want to have as a leader? Have I considered how much traveling I want to do? All of those things are important that there was a time I didn't care about that. I was like, no, that seems like a really cool role and a really great title. And because three of my colleagues slash friends got these really cool jobs, you know, I have to have that too. And I think as we become more senior in our career, especially, there's time to really think and reflect on what is it that you want to be known for as a professional and as a leader? And can you do that in your current company? Is there opportunity to still grow? Where can you provide that impact? And if there is another role, another goal that you have, what can you do now to get there so it's a more thoughtful move versus just feeling that FOMO and wanting to do something because it's trendy and others are doing it?
The grass isn't greener.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you make changes in your career, you have to be really thoughtful about it. And that's something that I had the opportunity to learn better.
Thank you for sharing this. I really also like how you talked about the first team and how you learn to become a team player, basically. And it can be very challenging, like especially if you're looking for a promotion and you have to prioritize everyone's needs and wants. It can be very hard. But in those tough moments where you do need to build that alignment, what have you seen work? Like how can you really align a team and as a consequence the department to go ahead with a change management topic?
Yeah. So even if you're spread thin and you don't have time, if you're not working well with your first team, it's going to be really hard to get promoted. And so finding ways where you can provide value to your first team. And for example, if your head of product is struggling with not getting a lot of engagement from clients, ask them if you could work with them to build a advisory group of clients together where they can get early access to new features and be able to pilot those features. If you're working with your head of marketing and your head of marketing is struggling with sellers converting leads or sellers not actioning leads in a timely manner or sellers not providing feedback earlier on different things that marketing wants to do with their budget, that's an opportunity for you to work with them to provide some real value. Building those relationships is figuring out how can you use your role and your expertise, and that helps a lot.
Absolutely. Now, you've also managed and developed many sellers in your career. So tell me, when you look into who you want to be part of your team, what are the things that you actually prioritize? What are some skills that you think will make a good team player, in particular in sales?
Yeah. And I think it's critically important to have a diverse sales team and a high performing sales team. So it's not just about, can this person do the job, but it's also, is this person going to provide value to the company beyond just being a seller? Do they have a unique background that others are going to learn from? Is this person somebody that is not only going to make an impact on our business, but impact on our clients? So somebody that, and at Amazon, I'm just thinking of the leadership principles that we had, somebody who has that bias for action, that's going to want to come in and find new ways of working and innovate how we work with clients and really kind of transform how they're doing their business so they're not just hitting their number and that's it. They're they really have that hunger to grow as a professional and really contribute to the business and our clients beyond just delivering on sales.
What is the best sales coaching advice that you've received and that you think you've given to your team?
Yeah, the best sales coaching that I've received is when you get to the yes, then stop talking. Once you get that commitment from the client, then you have it. Focus on the next steps. And then the most critical piece of feedback that I've given is to continually think about value and not leading with features or not spending a lot of time focused on problems, but what is the unique value that we bring that we can teach the client something they don't already know about their business that maybe we can help in a consultative way improve.
Absolutely. Listening more than speaking, and I would say like practicing that conversation you just said you should have before you have it. You don't want to be practicing in front of the client.
Exactly. Exactly.
You want to be ready for all the objections and everything that they might say so you can get to that yes faster. Thank you so much for all your insights. I mean, this has been fascinating. We covered 4 or 5 different topics and pretty in depth, so truly appreciate your time, Barbara.
Thank you
Keep
for your
killing
time.
and keep inspiring women in sales.
And thank you for all you do to enable sellers to innovate how we sell and to share your learnings with the community. Really appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See
Great
you next
talking with you,
time.
Anna. Bye.
You too. Bye.